What's up, all you guys and gals, and today I'm going to read another supernatural one-shot. And this is a Dean X reader, and it was suggested. You know who you are. Okay. Princess, he scoffed. I'm not being a princess, she huffed out in frustration. You're my princess. She fell silent as she stared at him. She felt the blush rise on her face and quickly looked away from him. So, if you two are done, Sam interrupted, and she felt even more embarrassed. She had completely forgotten that he was even in the car with the two. How she managed to forget about the other person who travels with them 24/7, she'd probably never know. Yeah, go ahead, Sammy, Dean said, and then pulled over at some generic restaurant called Barbecue Grill, in the middle of nowhere. Let's get some lunch first, though I'm starving. The three slowly got out of the car, and she stretched her legs, and Dean walked up by, slapping her butt. Oh my gosh, come on. She immediately shot up and stuck her tongue out at him. He winked and headed inside to go ahead and order for everyone. Sam gave her a quizzical look as she started pulling her hair back into a loose ponytail. What? Long hair and barbecue sauce doesn't mix. She sat down at one of the tables outside and went ahead and prodded at Sam to tell her some details on the case. Dean came back with all three plates of food and sat down at the table. Dig and eat, said happily, and plopped down next to Reader. So, he tried to manage his sentence between huge bites of food. Sammy, I have a huge bite. Tell me more about the bite case and bite, why it's so important. Sam just stared at his brother with a tad of disgust. Ever heard of not talking with your mouth full, Dean? Sam said as he looked from his brother to Reader. She shrugged and then chowed down on the ribs Dean had been so kind to order. Fat and content, they started off down the road again, and Sam rambled on more and more about the case and how strange it was. So who exactly are these things targeting? Dean asked. Sam looked over at the profiles again, then came to the conclusion of girls with reader hair and reader eyes. Dean glanced over at you and shook his head, already knowing what you were thinking. Ah, hell no. He yelled and you groaned. Dean, this might be the only chance we have at catching it. I mean, what other girl is dumb enough to volunteer herself to bait for a monster? She questioned, and Dean rolled his eyes. And you should be one of the girls who aren't that stupid, he reminded her. Dean, Sam intervened, and Dean shook his head. Nah, ain't happening, he said firmly. And she crossed her arms inside in frustration. You know we need to, she said, and he shook his head again. I'm not letting you, she interrupted him. I'm not asking. If Dean wasn't driving his hard glare towards her, he would probably be more of an unapproving stare. Towards her would probably be more of an unapproving stare. I'm doing it whether you want me to or not, so either help me or Sam so it's done safely, or leave us to our own devices and possibly screw up. Dean groaned. She had a point, and he had to eventually agree, even though he was extremely reluctant about it. Remember, if anything goes wrong, we'll be right there. You don't need to worry about anything, Sam said, and she rolled her eyes. I'm not worried. She looked over at Dean, who was leaning against the Impala with his arms crossed and a scowl across his face. Reader walked over to him and leaned against him. Hey, she said, and wasn't surprised when he didn't offer a response. Come on, don't be like this. He turned his head and she puffed her cheeks up in annoyance. It was cute, even though she never wanted it to be. But it still got Dean's attention, and he looked back over at her. He sighed and wrapped his arms around her tightly. I'm just worried, that's all. He emitted that word softly, and she kissed him in response. I'll be fine, she promised, and walked back over to Sam. The harsh sunlight slowly turned into a gentle moonlight, and she walked through the park pretending to be completely unaware of her surroundings. She wasn't that dumb though, for crying out loud. Everyone at the park at night by themselves should be on guard, hunter or not. She inwardly cursed herself for agreeing, just for the fact that it made her feel ridiculous that she actually had to pretend to be this dumb. At least Sam and Dean would be the only ones who would ever see her like this. What's a pretty lady like yourself doing out here? There was a figure. It easily matched the description of the vampire that had been terrorizing the town for the past week and a half. He stepped out of the shadows and into the moonlit path. There wasn't anything romantic about this like he apparently presumed it would be, and you really just felt more creeped out than anything. And alone as well. He licked his lips and moved closer to her. You shouldn't be by yourself at night. It's dangerous out here. Why don't I walk you home? He suggested. She stayed silent, turned on her heel, and quickly walked the other direction. Nope, nope, nope. That was not happening. The whole romantic Twilight spoof this guy was pulling was just a bit too weird for her. She wasn't into that kind of thing, and Sam and Dean were at a loss at just what she was trying to accomplish by just up and walking in the opposite direction when she had agreed to do this in the first place. He was suddenly in front of her again, spewing off cheesy pickup lines, and the only look she had was one of pure amusement as her mouth hung open. This vampire was seriously trying to recite Twilight to a certain degree, and she wasn't entirely sure what to do. No way in hell was she playing Bella for this freak. She just rolled her eyes in annoyance and lifted her foot and connected right with his vampire jewels. Sam winced and Dean jumped out, making for the kill, and sliced the creature's head right off. What the hell was that? Sam asked as he stepped out from his hiding spot. I thought you were going to try to drag him somewhere more private before we just sliced his head off. She turned to and just shuddered. That plan went out the window when he tried reciting Twilight, she said, and started walking back towards the Impala. She waited for about 20 minutes as Sam and Dean disposed of the thing, and then she ran up to Dean, wrapping him in a tight hug. Sometimes I forget why I'm dating you, she began, and Dean rolled his eyes. Gee, thanks, he said sarcastically. But she just squeezed him tighter. It might be because you don't use terrible pickup lines or try reciting Twilight whenever we have a conversation. He wasn't entirely sure where this was going, and he was a bit concerned on if he even wanted to continue listening to her ramble on or not. After tonight, though, she said. I know exactly why, she said, and then she leaned back to look him in the eyes. You're perfect for me, Dean Winchester, she said simply, and he felt heat rise in his chest and a warm feeling hit him. He smiled and pressed his lips against hers softly. I'll admit, I was a little concerned when you first started talking. I thought you were just going to continue to insult me. She giggled and kissed his forehead. I'm really glad to hear that, though, he admitted, because you're perfect for me. I don't need anyone else. He smiled she smiled and kissed him again. It started getting heated between the two until there was a cough from behind them. They both turned around to see Sam standing there awkwardly with his arms crossed. Dean, Reader, if you two can break apart for 5 seconds, Sam said with a bit of an annoyed look on his face. She blushed softly and looked down. Seriously, how could she keep forgetting about him? We have another case, so we need to hit the road, he said, and got into the Impala. The two looked at each other and then laughed. He's just mad because he doesn't have someone like you, Dean said, and she giggled. We probably should get going, Dean trailed off for a minute. The sooner we get to the motel, the better, he said, and then winked before climbing into the driver's side of the Impala. Reader blushed and quickly scrambled to the other side of the car. Yep, it was going to be one long car ride. Alright, guys, I hope you enjoyed that, Dean X Reader. Now, I'll probably keep doing these, but I don't know, and heck no, I'm not doing any limits, so don't even suggest them. Okay? Bye!